All right, let's jump in. We've got a whole stack of material here about really quite an incredible place, Sequoia National Park in California.
Yeah, it really is something else.
We've looked through articles, park notes, some research, and it's clear this is much more than just, trees. It's this whole ecosystem.
Absolutely. And I think what we should try to do is sort of pull out the essence for you. What makes Sequoia Sequoia? What's that feeling of being there? And also, what are the challenges it's facing?
Right, get a real sense of the place. So with somewhere like Sequoia, I mean, you have to start with the trees, don't you? The
Well,
giants.
you really do. They're the defining feature, the giant sequoias. And the crucial thing, the thing all the sources highlight, is their size by volume.
Ah, volume. Okay,
Right.
so not necessarily the tallest trees.
Exactly. That's the coast redwoods. Further north, sequoias are the champs when it comes to total mass, the sheer amount of wood.
Got it. Volume is the magic word for sequoias. And they're picky about where they live, right?
Very picky. They're only found naturally in California, specifically, that western slope of the Sierra Nevada mountains.
Okay.
And get this statistic, over half, more than 50% of all the giant sequoias in the world are living inside Sequoia National Park.
Wow, over half. So this park is really the global epicenter for them.
It absolutely is, which makes protecting it, well, incredibly important.
And among all those giants, there's one superstar everyone's heard of.
The General Sherman tree.
Yeah.
The stats are just mind-boggling. It stands 275 feet tall.
275 feet. And the
Very-
base, I saw a couple of figures, 36 feet across, maybe 37.
Yeah, right in that range. 36, 37 feet wide at the very bottom. I mean, just try and picturing a circle that big. It's enormous.
It really is.
Yeah.
And how old is it?
The estimate is around 2,100 years old.
2,000 years.
Yeah. Ancient. But the number that makes it famous worldwide is the volume. It's confirmed as the largest living tree on Earth by volume, period.
Standing next to that must be humbling, to say the least.
Completely dwarfing, I'd imagine.
And General Sherman isn't alone out there, right? It's in a specific area.
That's right. It lives within the giant forest, and that's where you really grasp the concentration. It's not just Sherman. The giant forest has hundreds of these massive, mature trees. They call them monarchs.
Monarchs, I like.
And 5 of the 10 largest trees in the world are found right there in the giant forest. It's just an unbelievable gathering of giants.
So the trees are definitely the main draw, but the park has so much more. The geology sounds pretty dramatic, too.
Oh, absolutely. You have things like Morro Rock. It's this huge granite dome just rising up out of the forest like a giant bald head of rock.
And getting up it is quite an experience from what I read. That staircase.
Oh, yeah, the staircase is famous. Carved right into the granite itself, it goes up over 300 feet.
Who built that?
That was the Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC, back in the 1930s. It's actually on the National Register of Historic Places. They put railings up, which is good because the drop-offs are serious.
Definitely need those railings.
Yeah.
And I saw warnings about weather.
Crucial point. Absolutely avoid it if there's ice, snow, or any chance of lightning. You're very exposed up there.
But the payoff, the views.
Supposedly incredible, panoramic. You can see huge stretches of the park from the top. The elevation there is 6,725 feet.
Okay, so huge rock domes.
Yeah.
But then there's also stuff underground that surprised me. Caves.
Yeah, isn't that wild? And a park famous for trees. It has over 270 caves, and they're marble caves.
Marble, not limestone.
Well, marble is limestone, essentially. It's limestone that's been cooked and squeezed, metamorphosed, deep underground. The geology there was just right. The right rock, fractures, water to form this whole hidden network.
Can visitors actually go into any of them?
Yes, Crystal Cave is the main one set up for public tours. It's got a paved trail, lights, been open since 1941. You get to see the banded marble, cool formations, big rooms.
And others? Any particularly long ones?
Lilburn Cave gets mentioned. It's the longest known cave in California, actually. Almost 17 miles of passages mapped out, known for colorful mineral. There's also Soldier's Cave, popular with experienced cavers, but unfortunately it suffered some damage. For most visitors, though, Crystal Cave is the go-to. The tours usually run like mid-May through late September.
Okay, so trees, rocks, caves. How do people actually get out and see all this? What are the popular ways to explore?
Well, hiking is obviously huge, and there's a whole range of trails, from really easy walks to strenuous climbs.
For that must-do, seeing the biggest tree, there's a specific trail.
Yep, the General Sherman Tree Trail. It's
Yeah.
super easy, just over a mile round trip, paved, a few stairs, takes you right to the base. There's an accessible path, too. And you're surrounded by giants the whole way.
Nice. And if you want to see more big trees in that area,
Then you'd do the Congress Trail, Also easy paved, about 3 miles, maybe a bit shorter from a different trailhead. It loops right through the heart of the giant forest.
Passing other famous trees.
Exactly. You go by clusters named the Senate, the Congress, individual trees like the Lincoln, the Washington, the President. It's a great way to really immerse yourself. And you can do it year round, even snowshoe it in winter.
What about something different, maybe with water, a waterfall?
The Tokopah Falls Trail, that's a good one. Moderate difficulty, 4 miles round trip. It goes through forest, past meadows, along the Sequoia River,
Okay.
and ends at Tokopah Falls, which drops about 1,200 feet down a granite cliff. Pretty spectacular reward. They mention it was carved by a glacier, kind of like Yosemite.
And Mora Rock, you mentioned the staircase. Is there a longer hike to get to it?
Yeah, you don't have to drive right to the base. The staircase itself is short, maybe a half a mile round trip from the parking area. But you can also hike there from the Giant Forest Museum. That's a moderate trail, about 3.8 miles, and it brings you to the bottom of the stairs.
Sounds like a good option. Any other easy, maybe family-friendly trails mentioned?
The Big Trees Trail is highlighted. It's just over a mile, paved loop, really accessible. It goes around Round Meadow, past the Giant Forest Museum, and has educational displays about the sequoias. Great for families, but probably busy in summer.
Can you sort of link these up for a longer day?
Oh, for sure. People definitely combine them. There's mention of like a 7 mile moderate loop that connects the Sherman Tree, Congress Trail, goes past Tharp's Log.
Tharp's Log. What's that?
It's actually a cabin built inside a fallen giant sequoia log. A guy named Hale Tharp lived there back in the day. Pretty amazing.
A log cabin, literally.
Yeah. So that loop takes you through the core area where there are literally thousands, over 8,000 giant sequoias.
Incredible density. And besides hiking, what else do people do there?
Well, you can visit Tharp's Log, see Crescent Meadow. John Muir apparently called it the gem of the Sierra. It's this beautiful meadow ringed by sequoias. The Giant Forest Museum is key for understanding the trees and history.
Camping. Other activities.
Oh yeah, camping is big. Lots of campgrounds listed. Lodgepole, Potwisha, South Fork, Buckeye Flat, Atwell Mill, Cold Springs. Some seasonal, some year-round. Backpacking, of course. Birding, fishing, horseback riding. In winter, cross-country skiing and snowshoeing are popular.
Look like you can get pretty deep into the backcountry, too, with harder trails to lakes.
Definitely. Trails like the one to Pear Lake are mentioned. That's a tough one, almost 12 miles going past several lakes. So yeah, options for all levels, from roadside giants to deep wilderness.
It really paints a picture of incredible diversity and layers of history, too. How did it actually become a park?
It was established quite early, September 25th, 1890, which makes it one of the older national parks.
Yeah.
And interestingly, it's managed together with Kings Canyon National Park right next door.
And the early days of protection were different. I saw something about the Army.
Yeah, that's a fascinating bit. From 1891 to 1913, it was actually U.S. Army cavalry troops who guarded the park. They were the first protectors.
Cavalry.
And this included the Buffalo Soldiers, the African-American regiments.
That's amazing history. Was there a particular figure who stood out from that time?
Captain Charles Young. He was the first black military superintendent taking command in 1903. And he did a lot, oversaw building roads, fought fires, cracked down on poaching, stopped illegal grazing, a really key figure in the park's early management.
So it started with the military. When did the National Park Service we know today take over?
The transition started around 1914 with the first civilian superintendent, Walter Fry. Then, the NPS itself was created in 1916, and they formally took charge.
And then cars started becoming common. That must have changed things.
Big time. The General's Highway, the main road through the park connecting to Kings Canyon, was finished in 1926. That finally opened up the giant forest to regular car travel from the south entrance, Ash Mountain.
I bet it got popular fast.
You bet. The records show traffic jams at the entrance station as early as 1927.
And the Great Depression. Did that impact the park?
Massively, but in a constructive way, thanks to the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps. During the 30s, they built so much infrastructure, campgrounds, trails, facilities. They're the ones who built the Moro rock stairs we talked about.
Right.
And they finished the High Sierra Trail in 1932. That's a huge trail. It goes all the way from the giant forest across the Sierra Nevada to Mount Whitney.
Mount Whitney, highest peak in the lower 48 states.
Right. That's the one. So the CCC connected the giant trees to the highest peak. Pretty cool.
And the park even expanded later on. Mineral King.
Yeah, that was much more recent, 1978. Mineral King is this high-elevation valley, used to be mined. There was a huge fight because Walt Disney wanted to build a massive ski resort there.
Disney, really?
Yep. But conservation groups, especially the Sierra Club, fought it hard, and eventually the area was added to the park instead. Now it's a popular spot for backpackers.
It's vital to remember, too, that the human story here goes back way further than 1890.
Absolutely. The sources mention the Monoc tribe lived in and managed this landscape for centuries, for millennia, before it ever became a park. That indigenous history is fundamental.
Okay, so if someone listening is thinking, I want to go, what are the practical things they absolutely need to know?
Planning is definitely key. So the main way into Sequoia is Highway 198, through the town of Three Rivers to the Ash Mountain entrance. If you're aiming more for the Kings Canyon side, you'd typically use Highway 180.
And the roads inside the park require some caution.
Oh, yeah, big time. They are mountain roads. That means steep grades, lots of sharp turns, narrow sections. There are vehicle length restrictions, too, usually nothing over 24 feet, and sometimes even shorter, like 22 feet on certain stretches. Don't expect to drive fast.
What about getting there without a car? Is that feasible?
It's possible, but takes more planning. Greyhound buses go to nearby towns like Visalia or Fresno. In summer, there might be connecting park shuttles, especially from Visalia, flying in. Visalia, VIS, or Fresno, FAT, are the closest airports. Then you'd rent a car or figure out bus connections. Amtrak trains also serve Hanford and Fresno.
And timing matters a lot, I guess. Seasonality.
Hugely. Roads open and close depending on the season and snow. General's Highway, the main route, is often open south of Lodgepole year-round, but higher sections can close completely in winter. Roads to places like Mineral King or Crystal Cave definitely have seasonal closures, usually fall through spring.
No means chains, right?
Often, yes.
Yep.
Tire chains can be required in winter and spring. Even if you have four-wheel drive, you have to check conditions before you go.
And expect crowds.
Especially in summer, yeah.
Yeah.
Weekends, holidays, entrance stations can get backed up. Going early in the day helps.
Lodging. Where do people typically stay?
Inside the park, there's Wuxachi Lodge, which is pretty central and open year-round, though winter access depends on the roads. Outside the park, Three Rivers is right there, very convenient. Visalia is a larger city further out with more options. And of course, camping, lots of campgrounds, but book ahead. And remember, the Bears' strict food storage rules are in effect everywhere.
Bears are definitely part of the experience. Is there a shuttle inside the park?
Yes, there's a free shuttle system, mainly in the giant forest area, running between places like Crescent Meadow and Lodgepole. Super useful on busy days, saves you the hassle of finding parking at every stop.
Good tip. And one last practical warning about navigation. GPS.
Right. Don't just blindly trust your GPS or online maps. They might try to route you onto some pretty sketchy roads, unpaved, rough, maybe even gated or impassable due to snow or washouts. Stick to the main signed park roads like the General's Highway.
Okay, that's super helpful planning advice. Now, shifting focus again. The material makes it clear this park, despite its grandeur, is facing some serious threats.
It really does. It brings the modern challenges right to the forefront. Sequoia and Kings Canyon are dealing with major issues, mostly stemming from, well, human activity, air pollution, and climate change.
One source had a really worrying statistic that these parks have the highest risk from air pollution among all U.S. national parks.
Yeah, that's a stark finding. And it's not just hazy views, though that's part of it. The pollution itself causes real damage. Ozone, for example, actually harms the sequoia trees. It hinders their growth, hurts the mature ones.
How does it do that?
It damages their needles, interferes with photosynthesis. Then there's particulate matter, tiny particles in the air, which causes respiratory issues for people and animals. And the haze itself, reducing visibility, is linked to those particles and other gases.
Where's it all coming from?
Mostly from outside the park, cars, trucks, industry, agriculture in the Central Valley, blow eastwards up into the mountains. Groups like the NPCA have been involved in advocacy and legal efforts around the Clean Air Act to try and address these sources.
And the other big one, climate change. How's that playing out?
It's making the park hotter and drier. This means more intense droughts, and critically, it's changing the whole dynamic with wildfire.
Fire's complicated there, isn't it? It used to be part of the natural cycle.
Absolutely essential, historically. Low to medium intensity fires would sweep through pretty regularly every 6 to 35 years, maybe started by lightning, maybe by Native Americans managing the landscape. These fires cleared out brush and small trees.
But then policies changed.
Drastically. For much of the 20th century, the policy was basically put out all fires immediately, the so-called 10 a.m. policy. Sounds good, right?
Right.
But it meant all that fuel, dead wood, dense young trees just kept building up and building up for decades.
Creating a tinderbox situation.
Exactly. So now, when fires start in these hotter, drier conditions, they burn much more intensely, much more severely. They can climb up into the crowns of even the giant sequoias, which normally resist ground fires. It's a huge threat.
So what's being done now? How is the park managing this?
They're actively trying to reduce those fuel loads. This involves things like thinning out dense stands of smaller trees, removing dead wood, sometimes mechanically, sometimes using prescribed burns, intentionally set, carefully controlled fires to mimic the historical process.
The idea is to make the forest less likely to explode in a catastrophic fire.
Right. Proponents say this kind of active management is urgent to prevent these high-severity fires from basically wiping out sections of the forest and converting them to shrubland.
And I saw a note about the Tule River tribe's approach. Different perspective.
Yes, that's interesting. The Tule River Indian tribe manages their own sequoia groves just outside the park. They've used cultural burning practices for decades, and they believe this is why their groves suffered less damage in recent major wildfires compared to some park areas. It highlights the value of traditional ecological knowledge.
But these thinning and burning projects,
Mm.
they're not without controversy.
No, definitely not. There is a significant debate happening. The material mentions things like the proposed Save Our Sequoias Act, a bipartisan bill aimed at speeding up funding for thinning projects. It got support from some groups, like timber industry and recreation folks.
But others opposed it.
Yeah, a coalition of environmental groups raised serious concerns. Their main worry was that the bill might allow agencies to bypass standard environmental reviews, NEPA, Endangered Species Act, under an emergency declaration.
Why is that a concern?
They argued it could lead to rushed, poorly planned projects, maybe even large-scale logging disguised as fuel reduction, that could harm soil, water, wildlife, or even paradoxically increase fire risk in some cases. They felt it prioritized speed over careful ecological consideration.
And this has led to legal challenges.
It has. There are lawsuits mentioned, filed by groups like Wilderness Watch, Sequoia Forest Keeper, and others against the Park Service, challenging specific thinning and logging projects in Sequoia, Kings Canyon, and also Yosemite. They're raising issues about things like using heavy machinery in designated wilderness areas, arguing it violates the Wilderness Act.
So it's a really complex situation with passionate arguments on both sides about the best way to protect these ancient forests now.
Exactly. It shows there aren't always easy answers when you're dealing with centuries of change and the accelerating impacts of climate change.
Wow. We've really gone from the awe-inspiring scale of the trees themselves down into the hidden caves, across the dramatic landscape, through the layers of human history.
And right into the heart of the modern challenges, the pollution, the fire debate, the conservation dilemmas.
It gives you such a richer understanding than just seeing pictures.
Yeah.
You get a sense of the deep time involved, the fragility, and the immense effort it takes to protect a place like this.
It really does. It underscores that these parks aren't just pretty scenery. They're living systems with complex pasts and uncertain futures.
It definitely leaves you thinking, about what it means to care for places that have existed for millennia in a world that's changing so incredibly fast.
Yeah. What is our responsibility, really? How do we balance protecting the legacy of these giants with the urgent need to adapt to threats like wildfire and climate change, especially when there are such different ideas about the best way forward? It's a question that sticks with you.